throw rocks at it, shall we?
Why are you so bitter about it, Mr. Nelson?
Well, it's this way. It isn't enough that Harriet bought this idiotic vase. Now she's going to do over the entire room to fit it.
Oh, well, why don't you drop it? You know, sort of accidental-like. And then tell Mrs. Nelson that you couldn't help it. Tell her you tripped and fell down. That it was an accident.
Would you believe a story like that?
Of course.
Gosh, how women change when they get married. No, Emmy Lou, I'm afraid my wife knows me wouldn't go for that.
Well, then I've got another idea, Mr. Nelson.
What's that?
I'd insist that she return the vase. And if she got mad, I'd let her go home to her mother. And I'd refuse to let her take the children. And she'd sue you for custody of the children. And if it looked like she was going to win, you know what I'd do?
What?
I'd let her keep the vase. There's no use being stubborn. I think you're foolish to break up your marriage for a vase you couldn't get more than a few dollars for.
Well, that's right. A few dollars for it. Well, say, I could sell it. But what if Harriet... No, she wouldn't. And if she did, I'd tell her that somebody... Emmy, thanks very much for the suggestion. Give me that vase, will you? That's a wonderful idea.
You mean you're going to sell the vase?
Absolutely. Emmy Lou, there comes a time in every man's life when he has to be daring and take a terrible risk.
I hate to bring this up, Mr. Nelson, but have you got something in mind in case Mrs. Nelson finds out about this?
Oh, of course I've got something in mind.
What is it?
A one-way ticket on the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe.
Well, say, while you're on that one-way trip, Ozzie, you might spend a little time thinking about 1847 Rogers Brothers silver plate. Who knows? Someday it might be the means of getting you back home to wife and family again. Seriously, though, this lovely silver plate is worth thinking about, folks, and worth planning for, too. It has beauty, richness, quality. A name that's almost 100 years old. A reputation as America's finest silver plate. Its patterns show details unknown to silver plate before. The high raised ornamentation, the pierced knife handles, the heavier balance. These are the features which show that men of imagination as well as skill are creators of this lovely silver plate. They are the features that keep 1847 Rogers Brothers America's finest silver plate. And here are the lovely King sisters riding out on Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe.
Do you hear that whistle down the line? I figure that it's engine number 49. He's the only one that'll sound that way on the Atchison, Topeka, and the Santa Fe. See the old smoke rising round the bend. I reckon that you know she's gonna meet a friend. Folks around these parts get the time of day from the Atchison, Topeka, and the Santa Fe. Here she comes. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Hey, Jimmy, better get the rear. Ooh, ooh, ooh. She gotta lift the passengers with pretty face, and they all wanna live to the Brown Hotel. There's plenty of them been traveling for quite a spell, all the way from Philadelphia on the Atchison, Topeka, and the Santa Fe. On a board, train's going west, train's going west. Ticket? Ticket! Can't go nowhere without ticket. Do you hear that whistle down the line? The hooey, the hooey.
back to the Nelsons. For a change, Ozzie has put himself out on a limb. Instead of taking the antique vase, which is Harriet's pride and joy, out to the garage, he's decided to save himself a little physical labor in the future by following that old slogan, out of sight, out of mind. And we find him now going into Mr. McQueen's antique shop to sell the vase.
Gosh, loaded with junk. Doesn't seem to be anybody around here either.
Just be patient, sir. Just be patient. I'm busy.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you. What are you doing?
I'm crocheting a tea cozy. You interrupted me just as I was going around the spout, darn it. There. Now, what can I do for you?
Well, I've come to see you about an antique.
Oh, you've come to the right place, sir. We're a member of the National Antique Dealers. Of course, you're familiar with the slogan of the National Antique Dealers. The older the better, except in a sweater. Let's see what you've got there.
I have here a very fine old antique vase dating back to...
About 1922.
1922?
Well, it's really older than that, but I don't want to seem too eager.
You'll have to admit it's beautiful, though.
Well, I wouldn't say it was beautiful, but it has a certain horrid fascination that women go for. You want to sell it to me?
Yes, I do. Would you be interested in buying it?
What do you want for it?
What did you give me for it?
I asked you first.
Okay, make me an offer.
50 cents. What's your price?
$50. Shall we compromise?
All right, I'll double my offer. $1.
Okay, I'll cut my price in half. $25.
I should have started by offering you a dime for it.
Hey, just look it over and see how lovely it is.
Very shabby condition.
Yes, did you ever see anything so gorgeously broken down? Just look at those beautiful chips and cracks in it. Tell you the truth, this is one of the most antique antiques I've ever seen.
Oh, dear, I do wish Mr. Cameron were here.
Who's he?
He's the fellow who owned the store 19 years ago. He was an expert on vases.
Well, can't you get in touch with him?
Oh, no, he died 12 years ago.
Well, if...
Never had a sick day in his life. Very tragic. Left a wife and 3 children.
Well, I wanted... Any insurance?
Not a cent.
What happened to his family?
Well, his widow later married a well-to-do businessman who owned his own buttonhole factory in Scranton, Pennsylvania.
Then they're getting along all right now.
Well, the youngest son had measles when he was 6, and their house was attacked by termites in 1934. But everything was just dandy the last I heard.
Well, the next time you write, will you remember me to them?
I certainly will.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure to meet you, Mr. McQueen.
The pleasure's been all mine, Mr. Nelson.
Oh, goodbye, Mr. McQueen.
Goodbye, Mr. Nelson.
Oh, say, by the way, what about the vase?
I'll give you $5 for it.
Sold.
Pop. How long have you been home?
Oh, about an hour.
Sure look proud of yourself this afternoon, Pop.
Well, David, I just did something pretty smart, even for your old man. Yes, sir, one thing every man should learn is the psychology of women.
What's that, Dad?
Well, suppose you're married to some woman, and one day she comes up to you and says, David, I want to buy a fur coat. Now, what would you say?
Well, I'd say, okay, if I can get a baseball bat.
No, David, that's where the psychology comes in. You try to make the woman forget what it is she wanted. You know what I mean?
Oh, like the time Mother wanted that string of pearls.
Exactly.
And every time she mentioned them, you kept talking about everything else.
That's right.
They look pretty on her, don't they?